What is Generation Z?
Gen Z is the first digital native generation. We grew up organising parties on Facebook, sharing photos on Instagram, and most of us are on TikTok.
Gen Z.
The Gen Z.
Generation Z.
Gen Z.
Gen Z.
Gen Z.
So the world was already talking about how different and cool Gen Zs are. Now India is talking about them too. Obviously because of their very creative and yet insanely unique approach during the CJP protest. But just because people are saying that they are different and cool, should we believe it? I have actually been thinking about this question for years now. Yes, you heard it right, for years. Because early in my career, I worked as a manager at something called as Gen Z Lab in one of the world's biggest companies. My job was literally to study this generation. I am not saying that makes me an authority on this, just that I have been thinking about this a lot longer than this video. So I went back to this question with only one objective: to figure out if Gen Zs actually are that different from people who came before them. And if the answer is yes, then how different are they and what are the reasons behind that? First, let me start by killing my own premise. In 2023, the Pew Research Center, the single most cited source in every one of those Gen Zs are different studies, announced that it was stepping back from generational labels like Gen Zs and Gen Alphas. Their reasoning was simple. Most of what gets called as generation research isn't rigorous science. These labels are largely editorial decisions rather than scientifically defined categories. Nobody even agrees on which year the Gen Zs begin or end. And when you're looking at an 18-year-old, how do you know you're seeing a different generation? Any generation's 18-year-old was reckless and thought that their parents did not understand them. So by every honest academic standard, this video's premise should not exist. Except
जेपी यानी जयप्रकाश नारायण भारतीय स्वतंत्रता संग्राम में पहली पंक्ति.
This is what protest looked like before. This footage is from JP Andolan. Sincerity was the aesthetic. Candles, topis, faces set in that specific expression of people who believe that this moment is historic and are behaving accordingly. Everything was heavy, everything was meant. And this is what it is now. Nobody in 1974 did that. Nobody in 2011's Anna Andolan did that. I watched a lot of older protest videos. It had many things in it: courage, rage, grief, but it definitely does not have a boy taking a police baton to his leg and telling everyone that it's a hickey. So are the demographers wrong? No, they're wrong about the explanation. The difference isn't when these people were born. It is whether they were exposed to the internet or not, and that too during adolescence. So what do I mean by age of exposure? It's simple. Between age 11 and 15, your brain is doing one thing: figuring out who you are. Am I cool? Do people like me? Am I falling behind? And this is just puberty. Every generation goes through it. Now, if you go through those years playing cricket in your gully, comparing yourself to maybe the 12 people you know, that is the usual experience, the one that probably every generation before Gen Zs have undergone. But if you go through the same years on internet, where strangers are watching you, judging you, ranking you every day, basis what you post and what you like, dislike or share, that shapes you differently and you come out a different person. And it only works in this way if you are in that age bracket. If you're already 18 or 20 when the internet shows up, you're mostly done becoming you. It is just a new technology for you. But if you're a young person who is going through puberty, you are figuring it out in front of the whole world now. In America, this happened between 2010 and 15. That's when the smartphones and the social media reached every teenager at once. And I keep seeing Indian creators import it in wholesale, which is lazy because our date is different. Ours is September 2016. Yes, Jio's launch. That changed every single thing. Before Jio, 1 GB of data costed over 200 rupees. After Jio, it became effectively free. Within a few years, India went from roughly 130 million mobile broadband users to over 1 billion. Yes, 1 billion, that too in just a few years. And now, before you fight me in the comments, yes, Quite a few Indians had the internet before Jio, but before Jio, even if you were online, your whole world wasn't. Most of your class wasn't posting, your neighborhood wasn't on Instagram. You could be online and still have a life that was offline. After Jio, everyone around you is on it. Your classmate, your colony, your cousins. And when everyone is on it, you cannot opt out of it. Because opting out doesn't mean I don't use the internet anymore. It means I don't exist socially. For a 14-year-old, that's not really a choice. And the kid who was 12 in September 2016 is 22 today. This is the first group of Indians who went through puberty with unlimited internet already in their hands. And that changed a lot of things. One important caveat before I begin again. What I'm about to describe is mostly a middle class story. The entire Gen Z phenomena may not accurately describe the poorest section of the country. So anyway, coming back, like I had said, the previous generations always compared themselves to whoever they knew in their surroundings. That comparison had a limit. The internet removed that limit. Now you are comparing yourself to a kid in US who is better than you at everything you do. So this does two opposite things at the same time. Number one, this is the driver of ambition. The Gen Zs have seen in full detail what the best in the world looks like. You cannot think small after that. Number two, nothing is ever enough, because when there is no end to the ranking, there is no winning, and there is always someone ahead. This leads to anxiety, insecurity, imposter syndrome, and even giving up in worst cases.
As a young generation, they're actually less equipped to deal with stress than previous generations. And so anxiety is high.
Now think about how the previous generations got their perspective about the future. The only reference was their father's life, maybe two uncles, a neighbor, a boss he or she saw from afar. 4 or 5 examples what a 30-year-old or what a 40-year-old's life looks like. But this generation can watch 10,000 versions of 40 before they turn 20. Every income, every country, every life they could have lived is documented by someone already living it. And in that process, they end up seeing the people who made it aren't happy either. The founder who got his exit posting at 2 a.m. about how empty it feels. The doctor, the NRI with the house, they are all on the same feed. They are all saying similar things. So what will anyone feel like in that moment?
Gen Z employees are facing major challenges in the workplace.
Anti-hustle. It is used to describe certain jobs where you can work when you like, from where you like, and mostly how you like. This is an anti-hustle work life, and it has become the war cry of younger workers, the Gen Z.
Every older generation's frustration was about access. The good life exists, but it's kept from me. This generation wonders whether the good life is even worth reaching it at all. I mean, they have already seen the ending. Now here is what was happening outside in the real world at the same time with them. A very common saying while I was growing up was "Padhoge, likhoge, banoge nawab, kheloge, koodoge, banoge kharab." Basically, if you study well, you'll have a great life. The oldest deal in the middle class of Indian society was that if you study, you will get a job and therefore a comfortable life ahead. And it was real. In 2004, around 10% of Indian Janta was a graduate. So a degree meant something because most people did not have it. But now the same degree just puts you in a long line of applicants. According to a study in 2004, about 30 lakh graduates were unemployed. By 2023, that number is 1.1 crore, nearly 4 times more. But the jobs have not increased at the same pace. And when you put all the job cuts happening due to AI, it has gotten even worse. So you grow up comparing yourself to the whole world. You have already seen the ending and it does not look worth it. The one deal your parents believed in isn't working like it used to. So what do? You stop trusting. And can we even blame the Gen Zs? So up until this point, we have discussed why they are different and what growing up with internet did to them. Now let's talk about how they have changed. What kind of traits have they developed? And here is the interesting part. This entire thing is a global phenomena. You can observe these behavioral changes across the world. Of course, it depends on the age of exposure to the internet. Think about it. Every brand, every influencer, every political campaign, every motivational page, someone has been trying to sell something to them through a screen for their entire conscious life. Nobody before them had this at this scale. Brands have been making full-on playbooks since 2019 on how to get Gen Zs. I know it because even I have made one too. So they developed something no previous generation needed at that scale. A filter. They can smell bullshit from miles away. They can tell when someone is being sincere or just acting sincere. Not always, not perfectly, but quickly, quicker than any generation before them. Because obviously they have had more practice. They are all cameras. The other generations picked up a camera when something was worth filming. The Gen Zs, they record anything and everything. And this matters because when something actually happens, a protest, a beating, a speech, a lie, nobody needs to document it. It's already being documented by thousands of people, and that too as a reflex. And that changes everything about how information works. I mean, you know how political operations work, especially in this country. You hire rooms full of people to push one version of the story until it looks like everyone agrees. But it has a ceiling. How many can you hire? 500, 1,000, 10,000? I mean, how will you beat a generation with millions of cameras, each with their own audience, each posting in real time? But again, cameras don't explain how so many Gen Zs show up in Gen Z protests, that too so quickly. So this was the part that confused me for the longest time. Everything I just described, the distrust, the disillusionment, the exhaustion, that should produce people who retreat, who check out, who don't care enough. And in many ways it has. Every measure we have says that this is the loneliest generation on record. Fewer close friendships, less time physically spent with other people, more reported isolation than any group we have ever measured. So how did this same generation pull off the fastest, most coordinated mass protest in recent history? No political party behind it, no organization, just suddenly thousands, that too in days. By the way, this phenomena has happened across the world. But how? It's because lonely and unconnected are not the same thing. This generation has been building relationships online since they were kids, not as a substitute for real life, but actually as real life. Discord servers, gaming groups, fandoms, group chats that have been running for years. They are not networking or organizing. They are just chilling out. The people in it already have shared references, shared humor, and even shared trust. They legit have built a language that is basically their own. I mean, how is a 60-year-old going to understand? I mean, it works like a border that nobody built on purpose. You're either in it or you're not. And you can't easily fake your way in, because by the time you have learned today's reference, they're on to the next one. That's why it looks like it came out of nowhere. Because these aren't organizations. They don't behave like organizations. Sure, there are faces. Someone will always be visible. But the energy isn't flowing from one person down to a crowd. Earlier movements had a clear center, JP or Anna Hazare. Whether removing them would have stopped the movement, I don't know. But the structure was visibly built around them. Here the structure looks different. It's flatter. And in case of CGP protest, even when Sonam Wangchuk broke the fast, the protest did not stop. In fact, it kept growing. That one fact tells you the whole story. Gen Zs are so funny, so unserious. I agree, I personally find them insanely funny. But the problem is that people don't try to understand the underlying logic. And here is the thing, joking about pain is not new. Soldiers in the trenches did it. Doctors in the emergency room do it between patients. It is one of the oldest things humans do, laugh at a tragedy.
Sergeant, are you having fun?
Well, it's not like going to the beach fun or making out with your sister fun. It's more like shoving shards of broken glass up your and taking a bath in Tabasco sauce fun. Who's next for the shower?
What's new is where the joke goes and how collective intelligence shapes it. A soldier's joke was shared with 3 guys in a trench. It was always private. This generation's version is a reel with 2 million views. The joke isn't whispered, it's broadcasted. And here is what that changes. When someone who wasn't at the protest watches a funny reel about getting beaten up and laughs, something happens. They have joined. Maybe not formally, but emotionally they are in. The joke did what no speech could. It recruited without asking, and the impact is for all of us to see. I have made a whole video about how this generation has reinvented protests with humor and reels. I have put the link in the description if you want to check it out. So, are Gen Zs built different? Definitely yes, not by birth here, but by exposure. You give the internet to a kid at 12 and you get a generation that compares itself to the whole world, trusts almost nothing, builds network without leaders, and turns protests into a hilarious content factory. But before I go, one more thing. Gen Zs are still a transitioning generation. They got the internet at 12. But my nephew, he got a screen at the age of 3. And when he hits puberty, he won't be encountering the machine for the first time. He will have been inside it for a decade already. This video was about what happens when the internet arrives during adolescence. But what happens when it arrives at birth? I don't know. Probably nobody does yet.